Welcome everyone to a quick look at the PowerBoard Universal 360mm. This video is going to be assuming that you are already familiar with the basics of the PowerBoard. If you're not, I've put some links to other videos in the video description. For a very long time, everyone was asking us to make a PowerBoard for different O11 cases. We made a PowerBoard for the original O11D, but then the Evo came out, and the Evo is quite different, so it didn't fit that. And so there were a couple of reasons that it took us so long to make another PowerBoard for the O11 series. One is there's constantly new O11s coming out, and they do change them quite a lot. So by the time we design and develop a new PowerBoard, there would be a new O11 case, and it is quite involved to develop a PowerBoard. But the other reason is the layout of the case. Unless we can stick to the original objectives of the PowerBoard, I'm just going to disconnect the RGB for a moment, then we're not going to make one. And the main objective of the PowerBoard is to reduce cable mess and cable management. And because of the dual compartment layout with the power supply out the back, the layout of the PowerBoard doesn't work so well, and there are many reasons for that. I won't go into that in detail. But then after people kept asking many thousands of times, I thought, why don't we just make a 360mm radiator mounted PowerBoard? And then it's not only going to fit in many of the O11 cases, it's also going to fit into many other cases, and probably a lot of the future O11s. And so we came up with this simple idea to make a 360mm radiator mounted PowerBoard. So yeah, this is not just for many of the O11s, but it is also for many other cases. It's designed to be mounted to the right of the motherboard. So on this PowerBoard, we have not included GPU cables, and we just thought, due to the layout, it doesn't really make sense to, from the power supply, which is out the back on this case, by the way, this is the O11 Vision. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to come all the way across to the PowerBoard and then just come straight back across to the GPU. You might as well just go from the power supply to the GPU. The cable length is going to be actually less that way. So we decided not to add GPU power, but you have 24-pin and EPS, which comes straight across here from the power supply, and you can see them up here. So the EPS is a bit longer on this PowerBoard compared to others. It has to go across to here. So, you know, the layout on some PowerBoards, we have all of the connectors very close. The PowerBoard linking cables are only 15 centimeters. The PowerBoard PSU cables are 25 centimeters. On this one, they're going to be a little bit longer, and that's the same with our other universal PowerBoard. And that is just because if you're going to make something compatible with a lot of different cases, then you have to allow for the compatibility with a bit more cable length. But it's not just the 24-pin and the EPS cables. There are a lot of other features built in here. So we also have PWM and ARGB hubs. And we have the temperature controlled PWM on this PowerBoard with the potentiometers here. And I'll put another video in the description that explains exactly how this works in extreme detail. But basically you have some switches here where you can switch the two PWM channels. So we have one for the pump and one for the fans. You can switch them between motherboard control, which means you go into the BIOS and adjust your fan curves there, or temperature control, which means you plug in a temperature sensor here, and the PowerBoard actually has built-in RPM curves which can be adjusted with the potentiometers. And what the potentiometers do is they adjust the beginning of the fan curve. So it's achieving exactly the same thing as software or BIOS RPM curves, just manually with hardware and without the complexity of software and going in and out of the BIOS. The whole point of an RPM curve is to achieve a balance between temperature and noise output. Now, to do that, you need to be doing it real time. You need to be listening to the fans or the pump, and at the same time you need to be monitoring the temperatures. But the problem is then you have to go into the BIOS to adjust the curve, And you need to adjust different points of the curve, and then you need to go back to, you know, listening to the sound again. But with these, you can just instantly change for an optimal RPM curve. So you can see that we have a lot of PWM headers. So this one is for the pump input, pump output. So there's just enough connections for one pump. And then we have on this one 13 PWM outputs, and we have 4 ARGB outputs. So down here, as I mentioned, we have the 24-pin and 8-pin EPS inputs. Up here, the outputs. Something else we have on a lot of our power boards now is a PSU jump starter. So this is for powering just your pump to fill your loop, so that you don't have to disconnect the 24-pin and then connect it up to a jump starter or externally power your pump. This 4-pin ATX is actually for pumps, and the power board comes with this cable, which is the adapter, which runs from the 4-pin ATX to 2 SATA and 2 Molex connections, so that you can run up to 2 pumps, Molex or SATA. You could actually run 4, you could run 2 Molex and 2 SATA. Here we have a switch for the ARGB to switch between the motherboard and the power board. Now this switch is actually for an add-on, which soon you'll be able to purchase separately. It's a controller for the power board, and this is the first time I'm giving information on this. You can monitor RPMs, you can control the ARGB, and you can also monitor voltages with it. You switch to motherboard unless you want to use the controller to control the ARGB, then you switch to power board. On the back of the power board we have LEDs, and this is just for some edge glow. There is actually enough ventilation because the power board ships with standoffs, so you have ventilation around the perimeter and also through the power board to run a radiator and fans, or just fans in behind it. And when you purchase the power board from our site, you can select which radiator fasteners you want, or you can just go with the standard mounting, which just bolts it directly to the radiator mount without a radiator or fans. But different radiator brands use different fasteners, so some use 632, M3, and some also use M4, so that's why we have to have this selection. You also have options for different colors and finishes for the accent panel, and the accent panel is not currently installed on this one, but you can see it is on this one. So this is the satin black version, but you can also choose gold mirror, carbon mirror, silver mirror, white gloss, and black gloss. And with the power board you get fasteners. I haven't shown the fasteners here because there's quite a lot of different types that you can select from. You get a 24-pin linking cable, 8-pin EPS linking cables, and by the way, the ones that come with the power board are a little bit longer than this. And you also get 2 PWM linking cables and an ARGB linking cable. So these are to go from the motherboard PWM and ARGB outputs to the power board PWM and ARGB inputs. So I currently have the power board installed into the 011 Vision with our 011 Vision distribution plate set, and I also have a radiator installed in behind, and the fans are installed on the back of the radiator. And you can see that there's really plenty of space for everything. You know, that's the great thing about distribution plates and about the power board, is that it really just reduces the clutter. Although I didn't spend any time properly routing these ARGB cables, but they of course could be properly routed around the top or the back, and everything nicely hidden. And then you're just going to end up with the EPS cables across the top, and for those I would probably run them in here and then bring them back out up here, or I might run them in there, bring them out up there, just to keep things as clean as possible. And yeah, the PSU cables would just come out here and then go straight in here, but it would probably, you know, this section would be covered by the bottom radiator because that would be coming up to around here. Contact us at support@singularitycomputers.com with any questions, and I will reply to you as soon as possible.